The rain had been falling for hours, drumming steadily against the windows as I sat on the couch, cocooned in a blanket with a glass of wine in hand. It was an ordinary evening, or at least, it should have been. The evening news droned on in the background, the anchor's voice carrying a somber weight as he reported a homicide in the city. A body was found outside a local motel, he announced, and the screen flashed an image of a rundown building that had gained infamy in the past week. I barely paid attention. Crime in the city was nothing new, and it had nothing to do with me.
Or so I thought. Then the footage played.
Surveillance camera images from the motel's parking lot flickered onto the screen, grainy but unmistakable. Two figures emerged from the entrance, their faces illuminated briefly by the neon glow of the motel's flickering sign. My breath caught in my throat.
Emily. And Thomas.
My wife and my best friend. They were walking side by side, their movements relaxed, too familiar. Emily laughed, adjusting her coat against the chill, while Thomas glanced around, ever cautious. Their hands brushed, just for a second, but it was enough. My heart slammed against my ribs as the truth crashed down on me like a landslide. I had been married to Emily for 5 years. We had built a life together, a home filled with shared dreams and whispered plans for the future.
And Thomas, he wasn't just a friend.
He was my brother in all but blood, a man I had trusted for years, ever since we navigated the grueling world of luxury hospitality together. We had built our careers side by side, faced hardships together. I would have sworn on my life that he would never betray me.
And yet, there they were.
Emily came home about half an hour later, shedding her damp coat as she stepped inside. She was utterly unaware that my world had just imploded. "How was your day?" she asked, moving toward the kitchen with practiced ease, her voice as warm and familiar as ever.
I couldn't speak.
My eyes followed her every move, searching for the cracks, for some sign that she was about to confess, that she would offer me an explanation before I had to drag it out of her. She noticed my silence and frowned. "Everything okay?" The anger simmering in my chest nearly choked me. My voice came out low, shaking with the effort to control it. "You were at that motel with Thomas."
For a split second, she froze.
Her fingers trembled as they reached for a dish on the counter. Then she turned to face me, her expression carefully arranged into confusion.
What do you mean?"
I gritted my teeth.
"The news. The footage."
"I saw you, Emily. Don't act like I'm crazy." She stammered, reaching for a lie, grasping at straws.
I wasn't with Thomas. I was just shopping."
"You know how busy I've been with work. I needed clothes for the conference next week." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to believe her. But I had spent 5 years learning every nuance of her face, every flicker of emotion she tried to suppress. And in that moment, I saw the truth, the slight hesitation, the subtle shift in her eyes, the way she swallowed hard before answering. She was lying. I didn't know what I was hoping to find, but I knew I couldn't let this go. The doubt clawed at me, an insidious whisper that refused to be silenced. Over the next few days, I began to dig, following breadcrumbs I had never thought I'd have to chase.
The first stop was Thomas.
When we met next, I wasted no time. "You were at the motel with Emily, weren't you?"
He blinked, startled, too startled. "What?
What are you talking about?" I knew that look. I had seen it on countless people over the years. Hesitation, guilt, the desperate scramble to concoct a believable story.
"I saw the news, Thomas."
"I saw you on the footage, walking out of that motel with her." His face darkened, color rising to his cheeks. For a fleeting moment, I caught a glimpse of something, guilt, shame, regret, before he masked it with a smirk. "Look, man, it's not what you think. I was there for a work meeting."
"A work meeting? In a motel? With my wife?"
Thomas was a high-ranking manager in the luxury hotel industry. His meetings didn't happen in seedy roadside motels. And if they did, they certainly didn't involve Emily, a woman who had no business being there with him. I clenched my fists, my pulse hammering in my ears. I wasn't letting him off the hook that easily. Sleep became a stranger in the days that followed. My nights were spent in the dim glow of my laptop screen, searching, unraveling every lie Emily and Thomas had spun. The truth was there, I just had to find it. I started with Thomas's phone records. The data painted a damning picture. Countless texts exchanged with Emily the night they visited the motel, messages that carried a familiarity too intimate for a mere work relationship. He had called her 3 times that evening. There was no business meeting, no professional obligation, just a web of deception growing thicker by the second. Then came the breakthrough.
A video.
It was grainy, the quality poor, but the content spoke louder than any confession ever could. It didn't just show Emily and Thomas leaving the motel, it captured them entering the same room together. The footage didn't lie. They hadn't been shopping. They hadn't been working. They were together. And their bodies betrayed what their words had desperately tried to conceal. When I confronted Emily with the video, the color drained from her face. Her lips parted, her breath came in short, uneven gasps, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she had nothing to say. "Please, Daniel, you don't know the whole story," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to happen." I could barely recognize the sound of my own voice. "What happened, Emily? What did I do wrong?" She broke. Tears streamed down her face, her shoulders shaking with the weight of her guilt. "It was a moment of weakness," she whispered. "It was never supposed to be more than one night." "One night?" I scoffed, the words like poison on my tongue. "And Thomas? My best friend." She flinched, her silence more damning than any confession. Something inside me hardened. The betrayal wasn't just hers, it was his. Together, they had shattered everything I believed in, everything I had built. I had spent years trusting them, believing in them. And now, all of it lay in ruins. But I wasn't going to let them walk away unscathed. My revenge wasn't fueled by rage or reckless destruction. No, it was going to be slow, calculated, precise, like a surgeon wielding a scalpel, cutting away the rot. I started with Thomas. A few well-placed conversations with his superiors, subtle but effective, planting seeds of doubt about his integrity. The luxury hospitality industry thrived on reputation, and once whispers of impropriety began to circulate, it wasn't long before Thomas found himself under scrutiny. A few weeks later, he was suspended. The dominoes had begun to fall. As for Emily, I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream or curse or demand explanations she could never provide. Instead, I packed my things, each item a quiet reminder that I was leaving behind not just a home, but a life that no longer belonged to me. But before I walked away, I made sure she understood one thing: this wasn't over. She wouldn't see it coming, but the weight of her choices would follow her. And it did. Months passed, and the world they had built on deceit began to crumble. Thomas lost his job, his once promising career tainted by the quiet but deadly whispers that spread through the industry. Emily, once a rising star in her field, found herself isolated, her reputation forever marked by a single indiscretion that refused to be forgotten. But it wasn't the professional fallout that destroyed them. It was the silence. The inescapable guilt. The knowledge that they had ruined something real, something that could never be repaired. And me? I walked away. Not a man broken by betrayal, but one who had found his peace. In the end, revenge wasn't about taking something from those who wronged me. It wasn't about winning or losing. It was about reclaiming my own life, my own strength. It was about knowing when to let go. Because sometimes the greatest revenge is simply walking away, whole, unshaken, and free.